there's going to be a tremendous amount of hagiography of Colin Powell. I remember starting, I think it was in 2009, there was a concerted effort to like a reformation process for Colin Powell. And Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, there were years you could see him everywhere on the left, whether it was on Democracy Now! Or showing up on some of the left-leaning shows on msnbc or in other places, both as a pretty strong advocate of, against military action at the times, but also really part of Colin Powell's Reformation project.
So CYA.
And a total CYA. And I remember distinctly Wilkerson talking about how that day that Colin Powell had to give that speech in front of the UN was one of the hardest days for him personally and for Colin Powell. And they had told George Tenet, we're not going to say this, we're not going to say that. Let's look at a little bit of what he did say and understand. Colin Powell was such an important piece of the Bush administration when it came to talking to like moderates and liberals. If you want to talk about who the two biggest figures were that sold the Iraq war to people who would at least have had some natural tendency to be hesitant to go after a country which had absolutely no connection to 9/11. Thomas Friedman and Colin Powell would be your two top candidates, it seems to me, and not necessarily in that order. Here is Colin Powell giving a speech at the UN, basically leading up. He was right. He's like in the pitching world, they'd call him the closer.
Right.
Things that emerges from the thick intelligence file we have on Iraq's biological weapons is the existence of mobile production facilities used to make biological agents. Let me take you inside that intelligence file and share with you what we know from eyewitness accounts. We have first-hand descriptions of biological weapons factories on wheels and on rails. The trucks and train cars are easily moved and are designed to evade detection by inspectors. In a matter of months, they can produce a quantity of biological poison equal to the entire amount that Iraq claimed to have produced in the years prior to the Gulf War. Saddam Hussein's intentions have never changed. He is not developing the missiles for self-defense. These are missiles that Iraq wants in order to project power, to threaten, and to deliver chemical, biological, and, if we let him, nuclear warheads.
And of course, none of that was true.
I remember the weapons labs on rails, like little
the mobile weapons labs.
Yes.
Now, understand, there were weapons inspectors on the ground in the lead up to the invasion bombing of Iraq. And they were in public calling on the CIA, calling on the Bush administration, just give us some more locations because we're not finding anything. And put up that piece that was written today even. Was it Richard Haas? It was about Richard Haas. Colin Powell, this is a Market Watch. Colin Powell scrubbed from UN testimony in 2003. That's the clip that we just watched. All but 2 to 5% of flawed intelligence on Iraq weapons, longtime ally estimates.
Wow, what a hero.
What a hero. Only 95% of the laws. The draft prepared by Vice President Dick Cheney's office was just loaded with all sorts of misinformation, all sorts of questionable intelligence, recalls Richard Haas. Keep scrolling up.
Colin Powell later said he understood as a part of his reclamation project later to say, he was unsure about the intelligence. Well, you didn't present a case that had any doubt in front of the United Nations.
And let's be clear. If somebody hands you a document and says, hey, go in front of the world, literally, and deliver this, and you go like, there's a ton of misinformation in this.
Yes, the file may be thick, but it's full of things I don't necessarily
I'm
believe.
aware I'm going to have to eliminate a ton of, like, almost all of the misinformation.
It's junk intelligence.
Except the crucial 2 to 5% of misinformation that we really need to still get the job done here.
Yeah.
Well, also, let's also be clear. You hand me a document that has that much misinformation, I'm going to look at you and go like, maybe this person doesn't have necessarily the best intentions, or their integrity is questionable. There is no doubt that if Colin Powell, the day after giving that speech, and I know he's a good soldier, he's going to do what the commander-in-chief orders him, even though at that time he is Secretary of State. He is not a soldier.
Well, I mean, he learned well from the My Lai massacre.
But regardless, if you want to have integrity in that moment, if that guy resigns the day after, there is no Iraq war.
Or even if, I guess, he doesn't revise the 95% of lies out of it, and it's just an incredible delivery of facts.
Or just refuses to go in front of
The UN.
the UN. I mean,
That's why he went there, because they needed that extra push over the finish line in order to convince the international community that this wasn't a completely illegal war, which it was.
it was also, and they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't convince the international community. There had to be a
prize.
special coalition of the willing. But that was to sell to the American public, because the line at the time was, Colin Powell is a man of integrity. He would not go in front of the UN unless they had what they said they had. That was exactly how it was sold at that time. And so if there has ever been an instance in history where one person could have done one thing to save hundreds upon hundreds of innocent lives, Colin Powell was presented with that kind of moment. And so all the other things you want to say about him, nice guy,
Statesman, but just to
Statesman,
add to that, just really quickly, the statesmanliness of him is actually what makes it more evil, because he used that credibility that he had built up from that time in order to sell this illegal war. So like when we're seeing all of these hagiographies and these obituaries about how nice of a guy he is, or how much of a professional he was, he used what he built up there in order to do this evil thing. So we can't divorce what the outcome was from his conduct or the way he conducted himself.
Well, exactly, because he leveraged that as a way.
It makes it worse.
Of basically getting people to sign off on the idea of killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. Never mind the displacement of millions internal and external refugees.
He was a war criminal, and that's what it needs, how it needs to be framed.
So may have been a nice father, husband, son, and interesting story of a guy overcoming racial barriers to then go on and use all that he had built as a leverage point to provide for the deaths, killings, murders of hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. So, 84, that's a pretty good run. There's literally hundreds of thousands of people who never even came remotely close to that age because he had to follow the orders, I guess.
And the fact that he was still so respected after all of this is a condemnation of the entire system, and less of like a boon to who he was personally.
Yep.